Project management is the pursuit of delivering high quality work on time and in budget. The goal of project management is to create an awesome experience that meets or exceeds the quality threshold.
Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic podcast. This is the show where we share cutting edge strategies on acquiring leads and sales for your business through paid traffic. And I'm here with MacKenzie to talk about a topic that I think is going to be either divisive, repellent, or maybe just boring. Like maybe we just I think that's the challenge, Grace. We have to not put people to sleep.
Challenge
And
accepted.
having talked to you already, I think you're going to be able to pull it off. But it's one of those things. It's like accounting, dude. It's like, look, I know I need it. I know it's important, but please don't talk to me. Like, I hope I don't have to sit next to you on a plane. You know what I mean? Because I just don't want to. And so to introduce you to our listeners, since I've already butchered the introduction, Gray's the co-founder of ZenPilot. ZenPilot's a training and consulting business that helps agencies through project management implementation. And you said something right before we started recording that I thought was a brilliant quotable. Would you mind repeating that, please?
I was just saying project management is not fundamentally about software. I've never quoted this before, by the way, but project management is not fundamentally about software, even though that's where the bulk of the dollars go trying to solve project management challenges.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting. I wanted to dig into that with you, but I also want to maybe set the stage a little bit. Half of our listeners are agencies, marketers, freelancers, so I think they're right down the middle of the lane. The other half are CMOs, director of marketing, business owners. And so I want to make sure that our conversation is expansive enough to where they're getting value out of it too, for whatever that's worth. But I think that that's going to be pretty easy to do because everybody, if you have two people or more, you need, if not project management software, at least like some level of project management system, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And where do you, in your mind, where's the line of demarcation to where I actually need, I need a plan. I need to go take down a project management software, start building the template, start building standard operating procedures, because it gets so gray. If you're too small and you do it, you're just infrastructure heavy, and you're probably scared and wasting time. It's like, hey, dude, you should be out selling, not writing SOPs, because you have nothing
Right.
to processize. But then if you wait too long, which a lot of entrepreneurs do, now you're trying to rebuild the plane when you fly it. So how do you know when to start?
Yeah. Well, I think the ROI of all this stuff, like what's the return of project management? It's really like, or what we put into the system, because everyone's paying a cost one way or another. You're either paying a cost to have a better system so that project management is easier, there's less friction, and you're more efficient. You're saving more time and money as you're managing projects down the road, or you're not using a well-designed system. And well-designed, by the way, doesn't mean like takes a ton of time to design. You can have things that are awesome design. There's the famous Apple logo design story where it's, hey, it's 30 minutes of time to create this, and there's a big bill for it. So it's not about how much time goes into it. It's about how well the actual design is. But you're either paying the cost in terms of you've spent the time and effort to have a well-designed project management infrastructure for your business or organization, or you're going to pay the cost, down the road by not making that investment, where projects, or in the immediate day-to-day, where projects fall through the cracks or they're inefficiently managed. You get stuff out the door on time. It's just you're not earning your revenue efficiently or delivering work on time or on schedule. You're burning people out or whatever those costs are. So there's a cost either way and associated to it. And so the fewer people there, like the ROI of all this comes down to how many projects are we managing at any time. So typically, like your agency, I'm sure, was probably like ours. The first thing that you're doing is trying to figure out who the heck are we? Like, what do we actually do? And there's a lot of bouncing around for most teams in terms of what do we actually do. It wouldn't have made sense. The first business that we did was like setting up website pages for people and doing web hosting. And that's like, one is non-existent and the other one's extremely low margin to do. It would have been a huge waste of time to spend a huge amount of time designing some complex project management solution for that. So we weren't at the right stage. There weren't enough projects going on, enough volume to make it make sense to spend a ton of time on project management. We should have been pretty inefficient with our project management at the beginning. And then kind of once you figure out product market fit or service market fit, and you're trying to scale something, I think that's where it's like, hey, this makes a ton of sense to design a really well thought out system.
That's a really good note. And I think that's the inflection point too. Once you figured out product market fit, and you want to scale, you probably should already have some systems in place by then. But if you don't, now's the time to really say, hey, y'all, emergency meeting. We need to at least spend a weekend building this damn thing out. To the point that we started the conversation with, it's not just about going and getting a software and saying, cool, got ClickUp. We now have project management. Thank God. I'm protected. We'll never have another project system again. Like, what is, if you were to define project management, it's not software, it's not process standalone. What is it? How do you pinpoint it?
Yeah, I mean, project management is like the pursuit of delivering high quality work on time and in budget. Um,
Dude, you're
that's
so good at these. And
that
have you
creates it.
ever said that before?
I know I haven't said it in that way. Like it's those types of um, what we're shooting for is delivering a great experience for everyone. So whoever's this work is for, whether it's a client or it's our boss or our CEO or our CMO or whoever else, who the work is actually for, the audience, like that should show up on time and be done up to standards. The people who are working on the project, all the individual contributors, need to be a piece of that, and then the people who are helping manage the work. Like the goal of project management is to create an awesome experience for all of those, where we're delivering work on time and in budget that meets or exceeds the quality threshold.
I love that. We're going to cut to a commercial. Before we do, we need a nugget from you from the project management world. If you were to give somebody a quick hitter, easy win, what's the one thing if they stop listening right now but take away this gem of a giveaway, what is it that you'd offer them?
Oh man, that's a great question. Well, uh, I'll try and say this as succinctly as possible. There's three keys to making project management work well. There's obviously the tool side, which is what we all get caught up in and think about. Then there's the process side. Like what are we actually running? And so if you think about efficiency and efficacy, like the tool is to help us be more efficient. The process is how efficacious will this, like are we doing the right stuff to get the right outcome that we want? And the big piece that powers all of that is the team habits. And so project management is just a fancy word, industry, whatever, that we've created for like behavior change for people. How do we get people to actually do things the right and best way every time? And so that's the piece that we should spend way, way less time worrying about hopping tools or optimizing this tool or that tool. And from the guy who like optimizes tools for people, and way more time just on making it super clear to people what we need them to do and then holding them accountable to follow those processes.
Dude, this will be a really fun conversation. Habit formation is my favorite topic.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to dive into that with you. But first, we have to cut to a quick commercial break because Ralph Burns has gambling debts. A lot of people don't know that. He's a horrible, horrible gambler. He's a big problem with trying to put an intervention together. He keeps dodging them. But it's bingo. And it's tragic. So hang tight. We got to go pay some of Ralph's gambling debts. And we'll be back with Gray MacKenzie right after this quick break. And we're here with Gray MacKenzie, the co-founder of ZenPilot. You know what's interesting about you, dude, is ZenPilot's been around for 10 years. That's like 1,000 years in internet years. Like that's a
100%.
long time for a company in your space, in the digital space, to have survived. Just out of curiosity, and I hope I don't put you on the spot by asking this, but how many iterations did you go through before you actually landed more or less on like where you'd be recognizable to yourselves? Do you know what I mean? Was that within that 10-year period, or did that start 10 years ago?
So what I would say is we've been solving the same problem. There's no iteration in the problems that we're solving. Like we're still trying to solve the same problems. We're still trying to help agencies and marketing teams streamline their operations, fix their project management. But huge iteration in terms of the shape that takes. This started as a software product, and the biggest, like the lowest point professionally, and the biggest kind of identity crisis that we've gone through was when we were married to the idea that we're going to solve this problem with software. And it's way sexier to be a SaaS founder than it is to be a training and consulting business. And so we built this software called Do Inbound. That was the first iteration. That's still the business legal names. ZenPilot's the DBA for Do Inbound from when we made that pivot. And this pivot happened kind of end of 2017. But we were solving it for the first couple of years, trying to solve it with software. And then the big shift, I'm happy to get into that kind of journey and details, and what we learned was shutting down our software and then going to implement on someone else's kind of our solution, the training, the behavioral change, the process improvement on top of someone else's software.
Was that devastating to have to do? Just like come down halfway up Everest.
If I look back, like the gift would have been, Kasim, if you came in 2016 and were like, you guys are banging your head against the wall.
Saved you from yourself, yeah.
And tomorrow you're not allowed to sell software anymore and you have to do this in services. That would have been the big gift, but that would have been super devastating. By spreading out the pain, which I don't, I would not recommend to anyone else. I'd rather just have taken the medicine and moved on faster. But by spreading it out, I think it was maybe a little less devastating because there's more time to be like, hey, this is not working. We cannot get churn consistently below 5% monthly with this very, very like process driven project management software. If you have great processes, you love the tool. And if you don't, you hate the tool and you churn out pretty quickly. And most of our audience base, most organizations in the world are not super process driven.
What an interesting point. So if your tool was actually so good that the efficiency hurt your retention.
Say that again. The efficiency hurt our retention.
Yeah, maybe I'm misdiagnosing here, but you said if you had great processes, you loved our software.
Yep.
If you didn't, you didn't.
Right.
Which means that people that were inefficient were automatically churned out because you had kind of found the inflection points that would create the friction necessary for them to either change or die. And they're like, all right, well, we die.
Right. Yeah, we're gone.
Which is funny, man, because sometimes you actually don't want to solve the problem. Isn't that weird? Like in from a marketing perspective, I've got and I'm never going to ever say his name. God bless him. I've got a really good friend who sells SEO services. He knows who he is, and he listens too. So I don't know how awkward this next conversation with him is going to be. The way that he reports is a bold-faced lie. And he's like, hey, we built this many links. We clean up these things. Your website uptime is this and whatever. He never reports on rank. And I'm always like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you can't not report on the one thing that, and he goes, if I do that, I lose the client. But if they can see look, I created the content, I did this, I did this, then they'll just keep going. And so he actually wants to inhibit the efficiency of, of his service, of his deliverable, because it helps his retention. I think that just speaks to the integrity of what it is that y'all were doing. Like, you really found, gyms are like this, man. If gyms actually relied on people coming, they'd all be gone.
Right.
They'd all be under. So instead you pivot from software to service. And from, I guess, is it service or is it consultancy?
Oh, that's a great question. So I call it a training consulting firm. So the technical aspect is a service, like think of that as an agency, like, hey, we'll actually go in and we'll rebuild your ClickUp so that you get the right thing out. We'll structure it the right way so we can get the reporting out that we need to get out of it.
And is it always ClickUp, or do you use Asana, Teamwork, Basecamp, any other things?
Great question. So it's always ClickUp or Teamwork today.
Okay.
And are you familiar with EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System?
Oh, yeah, very, very,
cool.
very.
So on our VTO, our Vision Traction Organizer, that's like the 2-page business plan for anyone who's not familiar with EOS. One of the clear things that we have outlined for the team is we want to use the best tool for most agencies most of the time to solve this problem. Today, I strongly believe like that's ClickUp, and Teamwork is right there with it. And in some use cases is better. And we've kind of grown enough that both of those tools make sense. And we're kind of betting on one of those will be the best tool here in a couple of years. I'm really curious to see. You've got ClickUp, way more reach, way more resources, growing very quickly, but growing for everyone. Teamwork, kind of lower velocity in terms of product development, but they're solving just for this agency case. They found religion a couple of years ago and went back to just the agency use case. And so we're more aligned on the teamwork.com side than with ClickUp in terms of who we're both trying to serve. There's more overlap as a percentage of our audience base. But the odds that either one of those tools, like if you said, Gray, forget that you are partnered pretty substantially with both of these companies, what are the odds that either one of those is the best tool for most agencies to do project management most of the time in 10 years? Like, I would say it's less than 50%. That's just not the history of the space. The history of the space is like, Basecamp came out and was huge, and then Trello was awesome, and then Asana, and then Monday had their day in the sun, and now ClickUp's like the fastest
Dude,
growing PM
Monday
tool
had
in the
48
category.
hours. What happened there? Like Monday at one point, it was like, oh my god, they're gonna, no, 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 no.
Right.
Like they didn't even crescendo. It was just, I think it was just all ad spend, or I
It's a
don't
lot
know.
of. I mean, Monday's still doing really, like relatively, pretty well. They're right up there with Asana in terms of overall market share. But yeah, the buzz around it has died out, at least in the circles that we're running in. And so I
I
don't
hated it.
know.
I love ClickUp. We
Yeah,
transitioned from Teamwork to ClickUp, so I really liked Teamwork, but it had its limitations. It's very linear in its thinking, and ClickUp allows for what feels like a pivot table. It's like, oh, I can look at things from different views, and
yep,
depending on my role. So it's interesting to me that you've identified those two, because I feel like most agencies have actually also done something similar. It's like everybody's
right,
kind of either found ClickUp or they found Teamwork, and then they get stuck too because it's so hard to transition away.
yep. It is hard to transition. What's weird is the average agency switches PM tools every 19 months. Um,
Really?
and you just think of all the like, literally. I mean, what does an agency do? It's like we deliver services for our clients. The entire thing is project management. Obviously you've got the sales side and what you run in your CRM, but the bulk, 70% of your staff, the bulk of your time for sure is spent on doing actual client work, which requires project management in whatever form or fashion that takes on. And so if that's all getting logged somewhere and you switch on average every 19 months, now obviously there's a um, different churn frequency if you then bucket this and you said, well, show me agencies that are 20 people or more versus they're not churning every 19 months versus teams that are sub 10 and they're above. If you get below 5, they're switching tools every year trying to figure, because they're just trying to figure out like what works. And we spend so much, and you're to blame for this actually. um, it's all your fault. You're spending ad dollars. Like these software companies spend so much uh, because of the way that our economy works, where software businesses are valued so much more highly, and they
Mm.
can have a higher CAC to LTV. Um, they're willing to spend a lot more money to acquire customers. All the marketing about fixing project management is about tools, and so that's where all the focus goes. That's what all the that's our natural tendency when we're told, hey, here's the way to solve this. It's a painful problem. I'm looking for solutions. And all the things that are grasping for our attention are the softwares themselves. That's where people go to try to solve that problem. And so that leads to then a ton of interest and effort put into the tool side of what we're doing, way less on the habits and the process side, and leads to a ton of the churn that we see.
So I want to ask the question: where should people start in that case? With that understanding in mind. But before I do, I'd like to say that most of our listeners are not spring chickens. So
Yeah.
these aren't brand new startups. Generally speaking, it's like, dude, not only have I been around, but I've got all these files in Dropbox. All my emails are over here. We're using Zendesk for this thing, and I've already got this techno stack that even if I could replace my project management tool, that's a domino tip that'll go mess with everything else that it integrates with. And
Yep.
now I'm listening to these guys who are like, oh, you just you're solving the problem wrong, and part of me just wants to like. I like what you said earlier. Like I had to experience the pain slowly. Some of these folks are just going to have to experience the pain slowly. So with the fact that there's already some mess in mind, how do you solve this problem? Because you've said a couple of times it's not software. Where do we begin if we
Yep.
wanted to really tackle this and fix it?
I'm trying to think of like what's the answer, what's the difference between the answer that gets people to take action and the right answer? Like,
Yeah. How do
there's
we
a
trick
difference.
them to eat their broccoli?
Right, right. So let's see if we can work that some of that out, because this would unlock a lot of stuff in our business too as we keep growing. Is figuring out how to message that better. Um, like if you look at our marketing right now, there's a ton of stuff about ClickUp. We're very ClickUp centric, and that's the old adage of sell them what they want, give them what they need. It's like
Mm.
that's where there's way more eyeballs looking at how to
Everybody
set up
wants to move to
a client
ClickUp, and you're
portal and
just the
ClickUp
easy
or
button
do
for
whatever.
ClickUp.
And so That's what we're going to attract people in with from a marketing perspective. Then we're going to try and educate them on, we can give you the best ClickUp setup in the world. And if your team doesn't know how to use it and actually show up every day and do it, or your processes are wrong, like all of that is not going to be as impactful as you think that it is right now. And so there's that element. So the place to start is like, what's the fundamental problem that we're actually trying to solve, and what are we shooting for? Kind of what's the inefficiency that we're trying to eliminate? How are we going to measure the effectiveness of what we're doing? Because for most, like the first thing that you try is not going to be 100% accurate. There's going to be something that we need to iterate on. So understanding what do we need to have. And for most agencies, they're looking at, I've got all these people doing this work. Sometimes it's in different systems. Like visibility is the word. Chaos is the fundamental word that everything boils down to. Visibility and clarity are like the two words that come up all the time. I know my team is working hard. I don't know, what they're working on. I don't know what their capacity is. I don't know where this project stands. I can't see our utilization rate or our gross margins from all this time that's being tracked here, or I can't even see time that's being tracked here.
Yeah,
And so
like you, in your submission for the podcast, you said clarity is kindness.
Yeah.
Accurate systems give people the information they need to do their best work. I thought that was, at first I was like, you read that in a fortune cookie, but then I thought a little bit more about it, and I'm like, clarity really is, there's something about it that's, stress goes away, and you're like, oh, I know what I'm doing, and I know what you're doing, and now we can collaborate better. It's such an important thing to key in on, but then it's hard within the chaos to find the clarity.
Yeah, right. It's super hard with all the moving parts that are going on. Everybody's there's all this chaos that gets inflicted on our teams, and maybe 0.5%, like pretty much none of it is poor intentions. It's all accidental. Everyone's doing good work.
How
They're
horrible
all
would
well
it be if it
intentioned.
was, though? It's like, hey, I'm gonna hire you to make your life miserable. I'm sure those people exist.
We've run into a couple of those cases where it's like, no, this, like, I'm totally happy that they keep suffering through whatever it is. But that is, the vast minority. That's like noteworthy that's ever been experienced. So most of it is just like, hey, we've not taken the time to define what we actually need from this and what we need to accomplish. And I would look at it across those three lines. So your tool should give you that visibility. If everyone's following the process and their behaviors are right, the tool needs to be set up so that it gives you the outcome that you need. So really the place to start, I think, for most teams is to define what that scorecard should look like. In an agency ecosystem, I know I need to see what is client health at all times. Are we behind on anything? Are we ahead of schedule? How are results? So there's activity and results, obviously. Like the key pieces here are, what's our activity? What are the results from that? And then what's the health of the client relationship? Are like the three pieces that all come together.
Wait, let's go back because I think I'm miscounting. Yep. Define your scorecard. I think that's brilliant. What are the activity? What are the results? And then what was the third one?
So each of these. So what I'm getting into here with client health is like part of that scorecard. We know we need to see kind of client health, or
so if I'm running paid ads, it's like, what's the media efficiency ratio for this client?
For sure.
What's the gross, what's the spend actual versus projected? Those types of things. You would just say, for me specifically, what is it that you're measuring? Okay.
Yeah. What I want to see in your case is I want to see, like, how happy is the client in this case? What's the strength of the relationship?
How's that measured? Is that anecdotal?
So like NPS is still, all the systems are flawed.
Yeah. But NPS is the easiest, fastest.
Net Promoter Score is like the best bang for the buck, and it looks a little different depending on how tightly you're working. If you're working on someone's, you're running Google ads for somebody, and they're on a retainer and they're paying you $5,000 a month, I might measure their NPS. I might send an NPS survey once every 90 days. And if you're doing that at $50,000 or $500,000 a month, that looks a lot different. What the touch points are going to be and how frequently we're going to reach out to somebody.
You touch them more frequently, I imagine, the more important they are.
For sure. Yep.
Are you sending NPS? Can you do that inside of ClickUp? Does ClickUp have that natively?
It's not. It does. It's not a feature that you can just turn on and have on, but
You have
there's
to
a way to
build it.
design it and have it all built inside ClickUp.
Yeah,
Yep.
and if you're listening to this NPS, and I'm going to say what I think NPS is, Gray, and then you tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
It's basically just 1 to 10. How likely are you? And the phrasing is always pretty consistent. How likely are you to recommend us to a friend or something, or how likely are you
Yeah.
to continue working with us? 1 to 10, and then when they select their number, there's just an open box saying why.
Yeah. So that's right. So how likely are you to refer this product or service to and fill in the blank? If it's if we're a D2C business, we're going to say to a friend. If we're B2B, we're going to say, to an industry colleague or to something like that is the question. Scale 1 to 10. And then you get 3 buckets in terms of how those numbers are distributed. So 9s and 10s are your promoters. Someone who says, yeah, I'm a 9 or a 10, we bucket that into this group called promoters. 7s and 8s are passives, and 6 and below are detractors. And so your NPS score is the out of all the responses you get, the total percentage of promoters minus the total percentage of detractors. So if we put some numbers to that, it'd be like you got 100 responses, 80 of them were a 9 or a 10. That's awesome. 10 of them gave you a 7 or 8. They're passive, so we kind of throw those out. And then 10 of them gave you a 6 or below. So those are your detractors. So your NPS score is 80, the percentage of promoters, minus 10, the percentage of your detractors. And so 70 is your NPS score, which would be outstanding.
That was my next question. What are we aiming for from an NPS perspective?
Yeah, if you're running an agency, like the industry benchmark is, and this goes up and down and bounces around, but in the neighborhood of 50. If we see a firm that's at 60 plus, like they are in the top 20% of firms in terms of NPS.
Doesn't that change based on interval? Like if I ask every 90 days, I imagine the trend is a little bit different than if I ask every 30 days.
Why? Explain why you think that is. Like you get annoyed that I'm asking you so frequently,
Well, no,
or
I
you
think
just
I
have
get
worse data.
acclimated to it. I think the more I ask, the better my scores get.
Oh, interesting. I don't know if there's a correlation between asking more often and the scores. Obviously, the more often you get it, like the challenge with NPS is if you're asking it every 90 days and you've got 10 clients in your firm, you're getting 3 scores a quarter. That doesn't, like, okay, I got 1, 1, and 1. My NPS is
I
0. Like
NPS.
that's not helpful to me at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where
Dude, I
how
know
you ask
businesses that don't comp their employees unless the client delivers the NPS score. Like that, they get 100 out of 100 every time.
Yeah, right. So I think that's a huge piece of it is what are the incentives that you have for people. And the other thing about running a services business that you don't necessarily have if you're an in-house marketer, you may not have the chance to set the rules. But every new client that comes on, you get to set whatever rules of engagement you want to set. So a ton of people have rolled out NPS and said it doesn't work. Like 10% of people actually respond to this thing. And if you don't set the expectation that's going to be part of the engagement, you're not going to get responses. And also, if you don't incentivize and drill that into your team as well, you're also not going to get engagement. So both of
it'd
those
be
pieces
tons
are
of fun,
important.
dude. Is from marketers, clients always want the reports. That's the thing. Like, where's my report? I
Yep.
would put it on the back of the report. I'd be like, I'd say, hey, your report is ready. Fill out the NPS form.
Yeah,
We'll
right.
send you
Put
your
it on the
report
front side.
soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a brilliant idea. Is lock, like, this is the gated content, and
Right.
your key in is your NPS score.
Yeah. And you even make it a joke. You're like, if you want your report, I'd have
Right.
like a little image of me like, you see what I'm doing.
Right. Right.
This
Yeah.
is such a phenomenal example of what you're saying about it's not software, because the NPS score, you could do that with Google
There's a
Sheets or
million
sticky
softwares.
notes. There's a
Yep.
million
Oh yeah.
softwares. It's about make sure you have the process in place. But then it's like, all right, dude, I want to do the NPS thing. But if I think about, I've got 100 employees and 200 clients. So now I'm
Yep.
like, I even just thinking about it, I'm like, oh God, like
Overwhelming.
it sounds like such a simple thing, but that lift is now the benefit I have, Gray, and maybe not everybody has this, is I would just go assign it to Yvonne, my CTO. I'd be like,
Right.
Yvonne,
Right. Right.
but maybe they don't have the Yvonne. So like, where do you, if you want to start building those processes, where do you start?
Yeah. So NPS is one example of how to measure it. How do you measure client health today?
Right now for us, and this is an interesting conversation too, maybe you can coach me on how bad I'm doing,
Yeah.
but we've changed everything about our agency and we refuse to accept anything but one goal. So if you say, hey, I need, we're going after
Yep.
subscribers and revenue, I'm not going to take you as a client. We have to go out after one goal, and the goal has to be something that we can rely on. We won't take ROAS, we won't take CPA, but we will take ROI, we will take MER. And so that one goal is the thing that we have in our ClickUp dashboard. And I actually have every single client on one view where I
Yep.
can see their goals. And then it's binary. It's, are we meeting the goal and are we not? And if we're not, there's a second rate of measure, which is the trend line. Are we at
Yep.
least going up or are we going down? And then, so in a single view, I can say like, okay, who are my problem children? And of my problem children, which ones are coming back and which ones do I need to pay attention to?
Yep. So that is super close to what I would normally recommend. Like if I, without getting into it and saying, oh, here's the customizations I might make to it, my normal recommendation would be that your client health score is like a 1 to 5 scoring system. And the only different, you're doing both the things that I would recommend. Although we didn't talk about the client relationship side at all, but a 5 would be, we are meeting or we're exceeding the goal today from an objective. That's your binary answer right now. And the trend is not negative. So it's either staying strong or it's trending up. So that's the results side. The other piece I would look at is, and the client relationship is so strong, if we did ask them the NPS question today, and this is manually set by whoever the account manager is, and they probably do this on a weekly cadence.
So this would be a recurring task that you build in ClickUp to manage this.
It's right on the same dashboard that you're using. Just take that and assign it to the account manager. And they're doing this every week. And they're going to answer 4 main questions as part of it and make sure that that metric, that client health score, is up to date. And there's a same thing that you said about incentives around it. Like incentives have to be baked in here too. You can never say, someone who is a 5 should never churn unless COVID hits or there's some crazy thing that happens. Like you're lying to yourself.
Set somebody as a 5, you're telling me, hey boss, you don't have to worry. We're good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then in your, whoever's running the weekly delivery team meeting and they're going through stuff, we're not looking at every single client account. I'm looking at where there's been a change in scores, and I'm looking at anyone who's a 3 or lower. Is kind of
that's interesting because we look at the low, but I don't know that we look at the change in scores. So you would look at it even, if they've hopped from a 3 to a 5, you'd isolate that and say, hey, tell me what's going on here.
I would, just want to know, wow, that's a big jump to make. Like walk me through, what can we learn from that? And how do
you do that in a project management tool? Because the way that we have it set up, I can't tell who's changed recently. I can just tell where they are now. There's no timeline.
Yeah, so you could use a calculation to be able to pull that, or you can use the activity view to be able to grab it. The other thing that you can do is you can use an automation, and this is the most common solution. Like in ClickUp, probably most tools you can do the same thing. When this specific custom field, your number value, changes from this to that, or changes generally, add it to another list, and now it gets added to your issues list that you're reviewing.
See, now this kind of goes little flies in the face of what we've been saying the whole time, which is, I know it's not a software solution,
right?
But then you're like, you can do all this manually, but the software sure, gee golly, makes it easier, because if I didn't have that automation, now somebody's got to track this shit manually.
Well, the smile on your, like that, let's be real, in any tool, pretty much, you can have an activity feed, and it would take you how many minutes each week with the number of clients you have right now to just look at what scores have changed if you had it filtered to just score changes?
All the minutes. If I just went through the feed?
No. If you looked at a feed and the feed was only where
if it was only score changes.
Okay. Yeah, only score changes.
So I thought you meant if I had to look at everything we did for every client, and I'm looking just for score changes. Yeah.
No, just the changes. Like that's maybe what, 2 minutes a week, like 5 minutes a week.
Right.
But the smile on your face, like what lights up, and this is the difference between what's sexy and what sticks, is like, oh, I'm so pumped about that. We could go implement that now, and I could save myself 5 minutes every single week. That would be amazing. Dude, and that's like that's what we get excited about. Which is this weird like human psychology thing, when really like the more exciting thing is the overall system, and having people actually enter, like the more meaningful thing I should say is having people enter those scores and pay attention to it and answer the questions. The more sexy and exciting thing is like 100%. Like the argument I'm making is not, and I should be the last person in the world to make the argument. Like it's not that software doesn't matter. Software is a big piece of the equation. It's just not the biggest.
It's not the answer.
Yeah, right. I could give you that system today, and if no one was trained on it, and if there wasn't a process for how we run those weekly meetings, then it falls apart by itself.
Right. So I'm going to go all the way back to what your answer, which is brilliant, by the way, is really, really well done. I said, where do you start? Everything's a mess. Right. I'm a CMO or director of marketing or a business owner or whatever. where do you start? And it's
Yeah.
define your scorecard.
Yep.
And that is a badass answer, because the thing I like about defining your scorecard is, first of all, nobody's done it, right? It's just always been that thing that we've kind of have in our head, and maybe you have it in your head, but what you have in your head and what I have in my head aren't concentric circles. And so when you define your scorecard, what's nice about that is it starts to let you know where to begin. It's like, man, in order to even have this scorecard, I have to track these 3 things, and I'm only tracking 2 out of 3 of them. So now I have my next steps.
Yeah. Yeah. That scorecard piece. So that's where we got into client health. Like, client health is one of those things that should be on your scorecard. What's our average client health? Are we trending up, or are we or the change in client health? Are we trending up, or are we trending down? What's our utilization rate across, if we're running an agency, that's something that we're interested in. Gross margin. If I'm running an in-house marketing team, my metrics change a little bit, and I might look at how many overdue deliverables do we have, or there might be a different measure that we're looking at. Because what are those key metrics that we need to run a ship? What we're after with all of this is, how do we run our organization and team off of objective measures instead of subjective feelings? Because it's super hard to scale a team. It's just me and you on right now, and we may be calibrated. We might look at the world pretty similarly, and we can look at the same set of data and both say, yeah, that looks like about a 6 out of 10. The more that team grows, the more account managers or whatever role you have, you get people who look at the same set of data and say, oh, this client's an 8 out of 10. And someone says this client's a 4 out of 10. Like, it's just different ways of looking at it. So we've got to bring objectivity into it. So starting with the scorecard is the first piece. And then from that scorecard, that's where I get into kind of how much of this am I able to easily get from my tool right now? And how much of this do I need to build a system for to be able to actually measure those things and measure them accurately?
Dude, that's awesome. What I like about the scorecard approach is it actually sets my mind at ease a little bit. It feels approachable now. Because if you're just like, hey, we need project management for the whole company, I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
But if you're like, hey, do we have a scorecard? No, we don't. And also, the minute you said that, I want one.
Yeah.
I want to be able to just go up every day and just look at my dashboard and say, this is my company. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about how you think AI is going to impact project management. But before I do that, a lot of people don't know this. Ralph has a very rare disease. It's one of those ones that you pick up if you've been in, the merchant marines, or just made poor life decisions. And the medication's expensive. So we need to cut to a commercial in order to help pay for Ralph's penicillin. So hang tight. And when we come back, Gray's going to share what he thinks the impact AI is going to have on project management. Welcome back to Perpetual Traffic. We're hanging out with Gray MacKenzie. He's dropping knowledge bombs when it comes to project management, which, dude, I leveled a kind of a horrible, it was a rude way to introduce the conversation, which was try not to bore me, basically, is what I said. And you've made this super interesting. So I'll first apologize for setting that precedent. And then second, say thank you for taking what's normally not a fun topic and making it really compelling. I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's been awesome.
So AI, the buzzword, AI is going to solve all project management problems, right? You're just going to add an AI bot and it's going to see all efficiency at all times and do all the reporting and have all the answers. And then we'll never have more project management problems again, is my assumption. And this is all going to happen by next Thursday.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Just kidding. But so obviously that's not going to take place. However, and AI is built right smack dabby into ClickUp. So where do you see project management getting a lift out of AI tools, and what tools are providing that lift? Help people, because me trying to figure out what tools to use, I'm just going to waste all my time, effort, and energy, but you already know. So you can just give us the easy button.
All the buzz around AI, and it is a buzzword, and it's going to take time for it to be as impactful as it can, but already it's a huge efficiency driver. the teams who are benefiting the most and the teams who will benefit the most. Like I think the dream for most people is I just want to add the task into the system and it goes through and it says, oh, here's the best person to do it. Here's their availability. And here's the best person between their skill set and their availability, kind of their capacity that's open. Hey, I can get it scheduled by Thursday at noon to be done. Is that what you want? Okay, done. You don't have to do any of the looking. Well, for that to work, all the inputs are still going to have to be, set up correctly. It needs to know who your team is, what their capacity looks like. The thing that I'm super excited for out of most of the applications of AI are kind of the data analytics that comes from just the insights that says, hey, when you're trying to spin up a new ad campaign, Gray does it in 18 hours and Kasim does it in 4 hours. And the results actually wind up being twice as good when Kasim does it versus when Gray does it.
Dude,
So
that
even
is
though you're trying to
really
give it to
interesting.
Gray, why don't you give it to Kasim instead? He's not available for 2 days later. Is that okay with you? And so those are the types of use cases that I'm most excited for out of AI's entrance into project management. There's not a good system that does that today, but we're not far away from that. And when that comes, the people who are going to benefit the most are the folks who have a data architecture that makes sense and they've actually been tracking stuff and they actually have something that AI can just access and it'll have to do some data cleanup, I'm sure, regardless of how well people have done it. But they're going to have that whole database ready to roll for AI that folks who are half-assing this are not going to have in place. And so there's going to be a huge advantage given to people who've had strong project management hygiene and practices leading up to it. I
Bro,
think,
we need to pause there because holy shit.
yeah,
Holy shit. Like, if you want to take advantage of the nuclear weapon that's coming on behalf of all businesses and you want to arm yourself with that against your competitors and forgive me for saying it this way, but against your clients and maybe even your employees a little bit, right? It's like if you
yeah,
want to use this amazing tool, and I won't call it nuclear weapon, I'll call it nuclear energy
sure,
because then that means we're not killing anybody.
right,
Your ability to do so is predicated upon the systems that you have in place. AI is not going to be able to build those systems, at least not yet, but it's going to use the systems that you have on your behalf, and it's trash in, trash out. What an unbelievable value proposition for actually building it out now and doing it right.
it's like the best sales pitch that you could give everybody, and it's the same
Yeah.
thing too. I think the application for anybody listening is like in your business, it's the same thing. Hey, do you want AI to make our ads even better? Like the way to do it for your business is um, we need to have a data set that AI can learn from, and it can identify what things have we done that have worked well and what things haven't. And if we aren't generating any of that data, or we're not um, iterating our way towards that well, like we're not giving AI what it needs to work with. So why don't you start investing now, or ramp up your investment now, so we have better data for the tools that are coming that at some point in time we'll be able to do it better than we can.
That's really brilliant. Um, the AI conversation can be frustrating because it's so speculative, and the problem with AI is it's a lot like God. And I was raised Southern Baptist, so I'm not lobbing grenades at anybody, but you can't have a conversation with a Southern Baptist about anything that they don't want to have a conversation about because they always have the out of, well, that's how God wanted it. So like we don't need to discuss this any further. I have Deus Machina, and we're just going to wipe out the necessity of this conversation. Why are there rainbows? AI does that exact thing because on a long enough timeline, AI can do it.
Right.
So it's like, why am I building project management? Why am I doing anything? Because there's going to be this magical mechanism somewhere in the future that will just take care of it. And if we sit around waiting for that to happen, we're going to atrophy and die. And so I like turning the conversation around and trying to figure out what's working literally right now,
Yeah.
like right
Right.
now. So is there anything within in ClickUp specifically? I haven't played with ClickUp's AI tool, but is there anything within ClickUp that you see AI like really improving? The functions and functionality in people's work.
I think the ability to have it create outline tasks from copy, or take parent tasks and stuff and create suggested subtasks is one of the most useful starting points for a lot of teams right now. It actually frustrates me a little bit. I'm a perfectionist. I'm a recovering perfectionist, maybe is like the approach here. I know that perfectionism is not the best way to approach things. And there is some mentality of like good enough is good enough, um, that allows you to move a lot faster. But because of that tendency, I've got a parent that, hey, I'm doing this podcast. So to do that, I need to schedule it. I've got to do whatever prep, afterwards I've got to send over a thank you note. Then I've got to share it on social. Those are my subtasks of this like parent deliverable um, that we're doing right now. And so I kind of want to outline that stuff myself and make sure it's set up right. ClickUp's AI, wants to recommend it. And so for my personality type, um, there's just some growing I have to do to accept it and say, yeah, like outline or apply the template that what I want in this specific case. But a
Or
lot
not,
of
dude. What I
the
might be hearing is the expert telling me, "Hey, I don't want to eat the soup if I don't know what's in it." And right now, I
yeah,
don't trust what they're putting in it.
right,
So,
right. Um, but for a lot of so that I don't use it as heavily as a good chunk of other folks for that specific use case. I use it a lot inside docs, and what we're doing in docs, or I use it a ton in the activity thread. So if you wanted to look at your, give me a quick summary of what's going on with these tasks, and have it look at all the updates, the score changes, whatever else, like that inside ClickUp is useful to me and to a lot of other people. But the task creation piece, especially for folks who are new into the platform, that's been really helpful because it's so much easier to edit than to start with a blank screen. And so you put in
mm,
here's the deliverable I want to try and do, suggest these tasks to me. Now, if it's something that you do consistently, I'd much rather have a pre-built template that you've intentionally thought and designed rather than trusting AI every time to come up with something. Um, but those are like the three specific use cases that I'd call out there are suggesting or creating subtasks or sub steps of a parent task or deliverable, giving you a quick summary of like what all has been happening with this project, or for this client. And then the third one would be like the doc usage, and being able to summarize or create action items from um, all your ramblings, meeting notes, whatever it is.
yeah, I like that third one especially because that's where I think a lot of things go off the rails. We're so meeting heavy too. That's another thing that I think project management can really help. But even if you are going to be meeting heavy, the distillation of the information coming from the meeting and then making sure that we take action on them is huge. And I have
Yep.
seen AI do that really well.
Yeah.
Like it identifies, hey, somebody said that they were going to do this thing. Somebody better do it. So
Right.
that's cool,
You're talking
man.
about like the AI note takers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Right.
didn't know it did that. Somebody had, I don't know if it was Otter or Fireflies or what, but they had it on our
Yeah.
meeting. And then I got an email afterwards saying, here's all the stuff that you said you do.
Right.
And I felt a little violated. I was like, I know, like
I,
you don't have to remind me, but I'm glad you did because I actually forgot. So I have a note for you. I'm my evil marketer hat hopped on. You mentioned earlier wanting to maybe potentially improve your messaging as far as how you approach folks.
yeah.
And I think your messaging is phenomenal, by the way. I don't think it needs to be improved, but you said it, so then it got my wheels turning. Um, One of the sound bites that you offered really piqued my interest. I've got 100 employees, and every employer ever wants to, and they're all virtual. So I assume as soon as the meeting ends, they turn off their computer, they open Netflix, and then they just chill out until the next time you know what I mean? And obviously I know that's not true. I have amazing
Yep.
people and I love them all. They're phenomenal, but I do want the most out of them. Um, and you said, does your PM solution, and I don't think that's the right word, by the way, it's not solution, but
Yep.
does your project management solution actually motivate your team?
Hmm.
And dude, that's freaking
Yeah.
huge because if the way that you built this was gamified in a manner that got people like oh, that's worth its weight in gold. So for whatever that's worth, that was the thing that you said that I was like, man, if somebody approached me with that, that'd be hard for me to forget. You want the marketing message that people think about after the fact, like they can't sleep. And that would have been it for me is does my project management setup actually motivate my team? And right now the answer is no.
Yeah.
And then I come to you and I'm like, all right, great. How do we do that? So
Right.
for whatever that's worth.
That's helpful. I think so there's a couple things that like, can I run two things by you? And I
Dude,
think
I
this
love
might be
that.
interesting
Yeah.
for listeners.
This will be fun. We'll do a marketing brainstorm on the
Yeah.
podcast and people can
This is
see how
great.
stupid Kasim is.
No, I don't think so at all. I think this is the opposite. This is going to be like, oh, Gray, your thinking's way too small about how to gamify this to some degree. So along the scorecard side, like let's just take your agency and ClickUp right now. You got all this time tracked. Do you time track and ClickUp today? Does your
No, we
team?
don't. I have a philosophical aversion to time tracking that we can discuss, and maybe you can talk me
Cool.
out of it.
Okay. So let's just assume for a second that you did, and you've got all this time tracked tied to clients, and you know how much each client is paying you and whatever, and you care about looking at profitability along three or four key vectors, and you want to see it every month. I want to know what's my profitability by service line. When we do this service versus that service, which one makes more money for us? I want to see it by client. When we service this client versus that client, like who should I be firing? Who should I be as a client? Who should I be trying to clone and create more clients like that? You want to see it by team or department, and then you want to see it by individual person. And so there's not a way in ClickUp right now to say, hey, here's Kasim's rate, here's Gray's rate. So let's run the calculations on time spent. So we've built that solution. So it's this profitability utilizations reporting plugin that basically ties into all your ClickUp data, sucks it out, runs the calculations, and presents it in a dashboard that we then re-embed into ClickUp. So it lives in your ClickUp dashboards. And that, for folks who opt in, like the next place to go with that is to be able to take that, and for folks who opt in, do like basically benchmark groups and be able to say, hey, would you like to compare yourself to 6 other agencies or 60 other agencies who are between 80 and 150 team members, and see what their profitability looks like and what their utilization looks like. And you're just seeing the benchmark, you're not seeing individual data. So I think that's how people opt into it. And that creates some gamification for the kind of exec or leadership level of the agency. It does nothing for the individual team members, though. That's, that data is probably not going, certainly not profitability by individual person is not getting shared in the vast majority of organizations with teams. So that's kind of like high level, one area of gamification that we're working on building out. On the lower level, I don't have the first thing that's in place right now is as you go through kind of the training and certification process in what we do. Every single member of every single team goes through our agency project management certification, if they're an agency. So it doesn't matter. You could be a half-time contractor, or you could be a media buyer or whatever else. Everyone goes through it. And there's some other training that's available, and that you earn different badges and unlock access to different areas, but there's not a huge tangible reward. And so I think there's a huge opportunity to do more gamification. So those are two things that are either already in play or coming. Is there anything else that's obvious to you? Is it like benchmarking stuff? Hey, your teammates completed 13 tasks today on average, took them XYZ time. You're at 4. How would you like to get? Or you're at 6. Probably the more motivating thing. It should probably all be positive. Maybe not all be positive spin, but you're in the top 20% of task performers today or something. Like, is there anything else that's obvious to you as you hear some of those things that might be helpful gamification steps?
As an employer, I love the idea of being able to see my entity compared to other similar entities. That's really helpful. I'd end up having questions about how it rolls out. I'm thinking about from the employee perspective, though. One of the things I've always been worried about is, man, I'm really obsessive with culture. It's why I don't like to track hours.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people feeling. I don't put like there. I have friends that put like software on people's desktops that screenshot their desktop.
Right. Yeah. Every 10
And I'm
minutes
like,
or whatever.
yeah, I'm like, dude, what kind of, what message is that sending? How do
Right.
you have a relationship with a human who's like big brothering you that way? I'm like,
Yeah.
you're like the weird obsessive boyfriend that's stalking this girl, and we need to protect her from you.
Yep.
And I realize that tracking hours and screenshotting desktops are worlds apart, but they live on the same spectrum of suspicion. And so for me, and I'm not answering your question at all, Gray. You're welcome for
That's
dancing
okay.
around. But it just as we're bouncing this back and forth, the efficiency measures I would want to see would be in the background. Like if you could take intrinsic qualifications of performance and then benchmark those against, because here's the other thing, and I might be the only employer who's like this, but if Sally spends 3 hours a day working and Jeffrey spends 10 hours a day working, but Sally has more clients who are happier. I want more Sallys and I'll pay her more and God bless her. Like I don't, so I feel like in a lot of ways we're actually tracking the wrong thing. That's what I'm saying. I took the long way. I want to make sure through the agency dashboard that we're tracking the right things. And I think employers that are obsessed with things like time, why are we so obsessed with time? My most efficient employees, my best employees spend the least time on stuff. And so if there was a way to look at the goals that I define, things like revenue, NPS scores, client performance, retention is huge, 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 huge. And then on a macro scale, start to see which of my resources, and maybe more importantly, which combination of resources, like,
Yeah.
hey, dude, when you put Sally and Marco together, holy shit. Like so I think that connecting the dots that would otherwise be very difficult to connect, I think that would be really helpful. Did I answer your question at all, or did I just talk for no reason?
No, I think that is helpful. Is like, what are the other, and time is the easiest one for us to gamify around
Yeah.
because most teams are doing it. And I don't, every team needs to have some way to do capacity management. So I would say two things. One is I would push you a little bit to think about, and my guess is that you've already grown through this, but most agency owners um, takes a while to recognize the autonomy that we crave as entrepreneurs.
Mm.
Like if you put Hub Staff on my computer and it screenshotted my computer every 10 minutes, I don't even have anything like 90% of my day I'm living in ClickUp or email
Dude,
or
I would spend all
what
day
does it
making
anyway,
sure you saw
anyways.
nothing but pictures of phalluses just to be passive aggressive.
Just
Like
right, right.
I would hate that so
So
much
I'm
that yeah.
yeah, it would drive me crazy. I'd be out of there so quickly. But that level of autonomy that we want as entrepreneurs is not the same level of autonomy that many team members want. Like they're
Oh,
working
what
in
an
an organization
interesting
because they're
point.
not wired the same way. So we all
It's the
the
hunter
natural
versus the
tendency is
farmer.
to take whatever we want and assume that other people want the same thing, and it's like the love languages thing. Like it's not. Um, they actually want more structure, more direction, more clarity than we would want because we're comfortable operating in chaos. That's the reason that we are operating businesses and are entrepreneurial. But that I'm totally with you on like,
Well, I just
uh,
want to real quick concede defeat because what a phenomenal point that is that I never really considered. And when I look at my organization, I hire a bunch of entrepreneurs. They all freelance. They all have gigs on the
yeah,
side. I almost insist on it, but I have had, and I've been an employer for 20 years, and I've had this come up very often when employees give me feedback. They're like, we need more structure, more whatever, and I'm like,
right,
no, you're a grown up. Go do your job, do your thing, and
right,
if as long as you do it well, I'm happy. And now I've found my people, the people that can come work for me, and we can make that work,
yeah,
but I've been repellent to
right.
maybe the majority of the workforce. And I just now, it sucks that I had to learn that on air. But
Well,
yeah, I think you're right.
I think it's like what you just said is really common. It's like, and this took me a long time to come around on. Is like we can't even comprehend that there are I think for so many entrepreneurs, it's like, hey, there's grown-ups like me who want to be given the general direction, and then like you go trailblaze and you figure it out. And like I don't want anybody looking over my shoulder, and I will come back. I'll do the thing and I'll come back and bring it back to you. And then there's the kids who want to be babysat. And we can't even comprehend that, like, no, there's two different types of like there's multiple different types of grown-ups. And our type of grown-up is like this. And there's these other totally mature, responsible, awesome adults who actually crave a lot more structure and clarity and hey, do this in this way. And here's the boundaries that you have to kind of experiment within. And they want tighter boundaries than we want. I think if I go back a second to the capacity side, the reason that most teams, so many teams, and totally people get time tracking wrong and view it as a micromanaging thing. When used well, it's a way to do capacity. It's the easiest way, kind of the default way to do capacity management and say, okay, I know
Mm.
we've got 40 of these units to work with. On average, a new client coming on board, this client's going to take you 10 of those hours every week. So I know that you can do X number of clients. Paid acquisition firms probably are the most common or one of the most common types of teams who do capacity management differently and say you're managing, it could be how much spend are you
That's what we
managing?
do. I
How many
bill by ad
clients?
spend. I pay by ad spend. I
Yep.
mean, our incentives are tied.
Right. So
Yeah.
so that would be a case where I would advocate for, hey, that's like, as long as that's working and that's how we measure capacity and say how much ad spend, here's what you need to at minimum be managing.
Right.
How, kind of what's the line between how much above that can you go because of how skilled you are, and then how many more hours do you have to put in, and where does burnout happen? And we're just figuring that out and probably bucketing people into different levels of performers there. So I think there's a lot of creative ways to think about capacity management, and I think more owners and team leaders should spend more time thinking about, does it have to be hours? Am I actually looking at hours and using them well? There's cases where absolutely that's the right metric to use, and I don't run away from that at all. And there's a lot of cases where if you can use number of clients managed, X of these projects, amount of ad spend managed, that makes a lot more sense.
Dude, you're fun to talk to. I'd love to have you back. If somebody wants to work with you or follow you, where do they go?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is probably where I'm most prevalent these days. Gray MacKenzie, websites, ZenPilot.com. And folks want to nerd out on this stuff, figure out my email and shoot me a note.
Yeah. Go check out ZenPilot if you're interested in done for you implementation of ClickUp. We're on ClickUp. I'm a fan, not an affiliate. Are you guys affiliates? Do you get paid by ClickUp?
We actually had an opportunity when we were signing up with, so we were ClickUp, we predate their partner program. Like I got connected with Zeb and a team when there were 8 of them,
Oh, wow.
like way back in 2017. And so we had a choice to either take a kind of a big cut in terms of commission of all these folks, or we had a whole bunch of clients we were migrating over, give them kind of longer extended free benefits on ClickUp. And so we figured, hey, we're going to make our money on the servicing side. This will make it easier for us to retain our clients and get new clients if we have this deal. So we've got a pretty sweet deal in terms of folks being able to get onto ClickUp at a, like, they would prefer us to say it for a free period of time before they have to start paying for subscription. But essentially, that's a discount.
That's awesome, dude. Good for you.
Yeah.
For those of you listening, appreciate you, grateful to you. Don't forget that you can win a free ticket to traffic and conversion. All you have to do is write a review, an honest review, wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple reviews, I think, is the easiest. And we're going to pick one at random, and you'll get to come hang out with me and Ralph Burns. Ralph will buy you a drink and talk to you all about his presidency in the Flat Earther Society, which he won recently, unanimously. He's very proud. He got a plaque. It's 2-dimensional. So don't forget to subscribe and leave that rating. We will be announcing the winner on January 2nd. Traffic and Conversion is January 9th through 11th, largest marketing conference in North America. Yours truly will be speaking. I'm the last day. I'm the last session of the first day, which is where they put people who they don't like, because that's when the bar opens up.
No, last session of the last day is where they put people they don't like. So
that's
you're
probably
not,
true. I'm the last session
not,
of the first day. So I'm the person that was good enough for the first day, but that they didn't
you're
like.
kicking off the party. That's a key
Yeah,
role.
maybe. I appreciate that vote of confidence, Gray. Let us know what we can do better. You can go to perpetualtraffic.com/better. Tell us what we do well, what we do poorly, and other topics or speakers you'd like to hear from. Follow Ralph at RalphHB and me at Kasim Aslam on all places social except TikTok, because I'm a grown-up. Go back and listen to previous episodes. All resources and show notes are at perpetualtraffic.com. On behalf of me, peace. Gray, last words to you.
That was awesome. Thanks for the opportunity to come on and share. I think we can all do a better job of organizing our work, caring for our people, and giving everyone clarity.
Yeah, great job, brother. Appreciate having you.